Just a Jewel with our host, Arthur Malik.
Welcome to Just a Jewel. I'm your host, Arthur Malik. Today we have an intriguing show. We have two great guests. We have Adam Murphy with us, and we have Ptah Amen. Adam, I would like for you to just tell a little bit about yourself, about your background, your upbringing, and things like that. Just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1988. My dad is a lawyer, and I followed in his footsteps. My mom is a social worker, and I have a younger sister who is 5 years and 3 weeks younger than I am, and she is a teacher now and works in the South Bronx.
Ptah.
Oh yes, I also grew up in Brooklyn, 1971 on Gates Avenue. Single parent household. I got two other sisters, and my upbringing was pretty rough.
What was the cause of you falling into your father's footsteps, Adam? What was the cause? What caused that?
So my father has this wonderful quality of speaking to young kids like they're adults. And I remember one time when I was about 4.5 or 5 years old, there was a case on TV involving this man named Ricky Ray Rector. And for people who don't know about the Ricky Ray Rector case, he was a very seriously mentally ill person who was on death row in Arkansas. And it was when Bill Clinton was running for president in 1992. He went down to watch Ricky Ray Rector's execution to prove to the world that he was tough on crime. To give you a sense of how sort of ill Mr. Rector was, the guards for his last meal asked what he wanted, and he said, "I'll take some pecan pie, and I'll have it today, and I'll have it tomorrow too," even though his execution was that night. And so I remember asking my dad, what is this about? I saw it on the news. And he explained to me that we have a death penalty in this country. He explained to me that we have a government that actually kills people. And I remember understanding what he meant, but not having the sort of emotional wherewithal to really take it in. And I got sick. And it became a focus and fascination of mine basically throughout my childhood. And I sort of knew from a very young age that I wanted to get into law and get into criminal justice issues.
So did you have a balanced upbringing? Did you have your mother and father present in the household?
I did. I had both of them present in the household. My mom was a social worker, and so a lot of her work involved working with kids and working with teenagers and really connecting with people. And my dad was sort of the more, legal-based, rational person. And so I tried to get as much of their qualities as I could.
Ptah, what about you? Did you come from a balanced household, or was it an imbalance in your household?
No, it was definitely an imbalance in my home. My mom's had a thing for attracting abusive men, and by her attracting abusive men, that led to me getting abused by them. So my upbringing was like I said earlier, a little rough. And we're talking 7 to 8 years old with me, and they from anywhere from 25 to 27 years old. So just take a minute to try to process that. An 8-year-old getting punched in his chest and he flying across the room. I think my first lesson for me was violence. My first lesson would be violence. This is how I learned how to handle my problems when I would reach my adolescent years. This is how I should handle my problems.
So was it just physical abuse, or was mental abuse also involved?
It was physical, but then later on it became psychological, because you got questions that you ask yourself, like, why this happened to me? So it's in your psychic, so it's bothering you. So that energy or whatever it carries with you.
Right.
And we should know that energy carries information. So I already had the abusive information in me. So my energy, when I come around, people they will actually feel it, like, yo, why you always angry? They would ask me, why you always angry? So they would pick up on the energy.
Right.
And that was my...
How did you meet Adam? How did you guys meet? How did you guys get to meet?
In order to answer that, I had to take you to my first journey. I went upstate in 1991, but I was only 18 years old. It wasn't no lesson there for me. I'm still angry. And I went back upstate in 1995. And I think that's when my journey began, because now I had a 20-year to life sentence. And it wasn't until 2013, after I had some painful times alone, where I had to sit with myself. I had to really sit with myself and find out, who am I? Not who I was made to be,
right.
But who am I? And that took a painful process because I'm still trying to hold on to a street image, you know. But I know I ain't want to do that no more. So in 2013, I went to the parole board, and I had a rough parole board. Ferguson, Commissioner Ferguson was on the board, and he denied my parole board. But I had a good friend of mine named Lump. He came to me with an application, and he said, "Listen, I can't use this because you have to have 6 months to the board, 6 months to the board prior to your hearing for them to write you." So he said, "You use it because I know you're gonna do the right thing with it." So I wrote, and then I got a response back from Adam Murphy and Stephanie Damon Moore and our good friend Luna, and the rest is history.
Okay, you're saying that you were upstate, and I know upstate, the racial tension is high upstate.
Okay.
So, did you trust, or was you skeptical on trusting Adam when you found out that he was a white man, or he's a Caucasian man? Was it leery to trust him?
No.
Because I know the tension
Right.
Upstate with the guards,
Right.
and they racist, they really
Right.
racist.
Right.
So did that prevent you from trusting Adam anyway?
Not at that stage of my development. I was already, my thinking already shifted 180 degrees. Now, how I'd have met Adam between 95 and 2000, then I would have been skeptical. But when I met Adam, I already came to grips with who I am, processed my problems, then looked at the world and said, you know what? I could take my problems off the table and put it in my pocket because there's 1,000 other people that's going through stuff worse than me, whether it be from in the home or on racial because I've seen people upstate actually get beat up and died from the guards.
Right.
You know what I mean, from the correctional officers. So when I met Adam, my thinking had already shifted.
I think this is beautiful. Your connection is beautiful because especially nowadays with the racial tension being so high,
Right.
with people are trying to get people to hate you because of the color of your skin. And I think it's excellent that you don't have that mindset, nor
Right.
does Adam have that mindset. And I would like to ask you, Adam, like, what prevented you or what caused you not to see people based on their skin color?
I think fundamentally it came down to my parents. From a very young age, they preached inclusion and equality, and that we're all born, we may be born with different opportunities, but we're all born equal. And that's something that really hit home with me. And I think, I talked about the death penalty before. The racial bias and the racial disparities in capital sentencing in the death penalty process is so stark and comes from this history of racial inequality that could be tied back to slavery, and that could be tied back to lynching, and that could be tied back to segregation.
Right.
And I think having an understanding of the history and confronting the history in a way that I think our country really hasn't. In a lot of ways, it's taboo to talk about slavery. Oh, that ended in 1865. Why talk about that now? It's taboo to talk about lynching. Oh, that ended in the 1950s. Why talk about now? And the same thing with segregation. And even though there laws have been passed and there has been some progress made, there are still these, as my boss down in Alabama puts it, tremendous narratives of racial difference, right? The way that people were able to justify slavery back in the day, white people to justify slavery, said, not only are we enslaving people, but we're going to be virtuous and we're going to be Christians while we do it. So how do we do that? We create narratives of difference about the people that we're enslaving. If they're less than human, then what we're doing is not wrong. And I think being cognizant of that history, realizing how it has affected you, even subtly, is really, really important. And really, it has to be confronted in a more honest way from the time people are children.
So what do you say to the viewers that are watching and they're in opposition to lawyers who fight for individuals that's for the death penalty because they think that what if you save someone that happens to be guilty? How would you feel? What would you say to the viewers based on that?
It's a great question. I think there are a number of fundamental problems with the death penalty. I am opposed to the death penalty because I think it's always wrong to kill other human beings, whether it's state sanctioned, whether there's due process involved. I think it's always wrong. I think I understand why people would be for it in an abstract sense, but since 1976, when the death penalty was reinstated in this country, out of every 8 people who have been executed, there's been 1 person exonerated from death row, right? And we would never fly, for example, if the odds of getting it wrong were 1 in 8. We would never drive if the odds of getting it wrong were 1 in 8. We would never do anything if the odds of getting it that wrong, given the consequences, were 1 in 8. And so I don't think you could have a system that imposes the ultimate punishment where there's that rate of error. I also think, just the racial disparities. There was a study in 1987 in connection with this case, McCleskey v. Kemp, which went up to the United States Supreme Court, that said that people who, regardless of the race of the defendant, people who kill white people are 11 times more likely to get executed than people who kill non-white people, right? And that just basically says, well, we care more about certain lives in this country than we do about other lives. And I think when you have a system like that, especially given our history of racial injustice, you can't have a death penalty system that is that racist. And, you know, you have people giving false confessions, you have, you know, all this stuff. And I think another thing is, I think there's something so cruel about knowing the exact time and date that you're going to die, right? There's a special level of cruelty in there that I don't think we really think about, but that working with people who are on death row, you know, knowing you're going to die in 2 years, knowing you're going to die in 6 weeks, just puts such an incredible toll on you. And being around folks who you know, serve time with in death row and who you get to know, and, you know, spending their last days with them before they get executed is a psychological torture that I think that most people don't think about when they think about crime and punishment. There's often a disconnect.
Okay, this question is going to go to both of you guys. Do you think there is a cure for to eradicate racism? And if you do believe there is a cure, what do you believe that cure is?
I'll let you answer.
All right. Yes, educated. Education is, as I always say, education is a great neutralizer, always. The proper education, because some people are being educated to continue the system of, you know, white supremacy, and we just dominate. So you have to get educated on, like he said, like Adam alluded to a few minutes ago, that, you know, everybody's equal. We should have the equal opportunities. So the cure is education, because the information that you carry is going to dictate your behavior and how you treat people, how you look at people, you know, how you perceive them. What should you do or not do for them?
When we refer to education, what are you referring to? Because there's people with their masters, there's people with bachelors, people with their PhDs who hate someone predicated on their skin color. So what do you mean when you say education? Education
in terms of race relations, race diversity. Like, I should know the culture of white people. White people should know the culture of black people should know the culture of Indian people, because we live in a diverse country. Right. Same thing with Hispanic. If you know somebody's background, you know their culture, because the culture is the cement that keeps everything bonded. If you know their people culture, then you have a different way or a better way of dealing with them. Most people that pass judgment on people don't know nothing about them. They just look at the outer of them and say, oh, he black, so he's a nigger. But when you get to the heart of the person, they be like, oh, wow, he's a great dude. He's a great dude. A good example is this. Mike Tyson said when he first went to Catskill, New York, he was literally a custom model. He said, man, I don't know what this white man gonna do with me. He said, but once he got to know Cuss, it was lights out. And then to this day, you can't talk about custom model or his wife Camille without Tyson crying, because these were genuine white, because he got to know them. So that's what I mean about prior you meeting somebody on the surface, you just judge them, you pass judgment immediately. So, but once he got to know him, and how he got to know him, through experience and being educated.
I think when society depicts, though, the negativity, especially when it comes to racism, it gets in our psyche, and a lot of us, we accept it, we embrace it without education. Right. You see, because once upon a time, I dislike white people too, because of what I was being taught. Right. But now there's white people in my life that I love dearly. Right. You see, so.
Oh, you saying being taught? You said how did you come to that conclusion at first, though, that you hated white people? Like, what was the avenue?
Well, what was the avenue that caused me to understand that I hated them?
Right. At that time.
It was, when people talked about slavery.
Okay.
When people always talk about the white man is holding us back.
Right.
I'm saying these are the things that I embraced, that I believed. So when you believe something, you act upon it.
Okay.
See, so Adam can answer the question also.
Yeah, I think education is really key. I think we could also learn from the lessons of other countries. You look at places like South Africa that are coming out of apartheid. You look at Nazi Germany. Any places that subjected people based on their race or some other non-mutable characteristic to just incredible indignity, and then tried to heal from it.
Right.
They need to acknowledge it first. And I think this country has not done a sufficient job in acknowledging its history of racial inequality. And I think before you could really heal, you need to acknowledge it and you need to apologize. And I think that there needs to work on different levels. I think on the sort of micro level, school children should be taught about inclusion, about our history of racial injustice. But I also think the government, on a sort of more macro level, needs to address it and needs to commemorate it in some way. And I think people are weary of the word reparations, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a monetary thing. Reparations just means to repair. And I think through apologies and through just acknowledging. So I think it's one thing to hurt someone or injure someone. I think it makes it far worse when you injure someone and don't acknowledge their pain. I think it's a different level of injury, and I think we've been perpetrating that for a long time, and I don't know if we're going to be able to heal if we don't fix that.
What did you do to help Mr. Ptah to get out of prison? What was your purpose? What did you do?
I think I just used my knowledge of the system a little bit for guidance. I think Ptah, really the tremendous work he did since he's been upstate since 1995, he deserved to get out. And I think what I did was help convey his story, convey his message, convey all of the wonderful work he had been doing in a language that I think the parole board could relate to a little bit more. I think it's really, I can't even imagine how difficult it is going in front of commissioners who are skeptical of you and who have their own preconceived notions about you without any sort of guidance or really a friend from the outside. And I was immediately just taken with Ptah and just how thoughtful he was and how smart he was and how much I learned from him. I think this has been a mutually beneficial relationship.
Sure.
I've certainly helped him from a certain standpoint, but he's really helped me and taught me a lot about life, and just confirms that we're so much more than the worst thing we've ever done, and reminded me about why I was against the death penalty as a little boy, because we're all capable of change and all capable of doing wonderful things once we're released.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Like it was unspoken. Like not only him, but like me and Stephanie, like and Luna, like it was just a connection, a sincere connection. And I think when I came down on a visit and they came to see me, they asked me, if you don't mind, just tell us how you was brought up. And I went and I dived right into it with no chaser, and I think that because the rawness, because I can tell you, I want to tell you what happened to me, not from a victim standpoint, but just from an experiential standpoint, so you can understand that if I can pull through it, you can pull through it too. I don't want anybody walking around life being a victim, having that victim mentality, like this what happened to me, so I'm going to justify that, and I'm going to tell you to do what I do. So I just told my story, and then I also told the painful process I had to go through to change, and we just had that connection ever since, and it was beautiful.
You want to tell them quickly about that dream you had?
Oh,
because I think that's really powerful.
Okay, yes. This what happened. I had a dream about my grandmother, and she's dressed in all white, and I'm walking towards her, and she opens up the courtroom. But when I walk in the courtroom, where the judge sits at, it was a coffin there, and it was a juror. The juror was still to the left. So that sat with me for a while. So once I got through and I kept going over the dream, I said, okay, I know what she's telling me. She's telling me I want you to bury your old behavior and come into a new person. And that's how I interpret the dream. And the dream, that dream was real, because I changed this totally 100. I took 180
You buried the old person?
I buried the old person, yeah.
And we use that in the letter to the parole board.
And he took that and he put that in the letter to the parole board.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
And I had one of the roughest commissioners interviewing me, and he asked me, "So you sure I'm not gonna see you again?" I said, "I'm positive, absolutely sure you're not gonna see me again." And once he gave me a salute, I knew he was gonna let me go.
It's beautiful, because when I asked you for a cure, what would be your cure to end racism? You said to understand someone's social background.
Right.
And you just described that when he sat down with you, he asked you to tell him some stuff about you.
Right.
So he wanted to understand your social background.
Right.
See, so that's beautiful. But I just want to ask a quick question to both of you, and you can answer as quick as possible.
Okay.
What color you wanted to be the night that you were conceived? Quick as possible.
Didn't think about it.
What color did you?
Never thought about it.
Never thought about it. See, and this is one of the things how we can end racial injustice, because no one had a say-so in the color they wanted to be to the night they were being conceived. Right? You didn't have a say-so. You didn't say I wanted to be white. You didn't say I wanted to be black.
Right.
So we could come to this realization, and what we can do now is everything would be predicated on your character, not your skin color.
Right.
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 Okay.
That's a good yardstick.
So what would you say to the people that may be watching the show that's still going to hold on to that racism, still going to hold on to seeing your skin color? What would you say to them to let that go?
To be totally honest with you, I don't think it's my place as a white person to say you should let that go. I think it would be wonderful if we could live in a world that, you know, we all see each other as equals, and, you know, we don't sort of have this binary based on our skin color. But I think, you know, as I said, until there's more education and until there's really a sort of formal acknowledgement and apology about our history that still sort of torments us now, I don't think it is right for me as a white person to say, get over it, so to speak. And I think I'd be being disingenuous if I did say that.
I was just going to say one thing, limited knowledge incarcerates you. So if you want to continue to walk around saying, I hate white people or I hate black people, you're incarcerating yourself. And you're telling yourself, I don't want to grow no more. And so my advice to the viewers is get as much information, try to think outside the box. Don't let nobody incarcerate you with their ideology, because the ideology can carry you down a long, miserable path. Because anybody, if I'm just sitting around talking about who I hate all the time, I'm miserable. And so I would say to the viewers, don't be that way.
Okay, I definitely would like to thank you guys. You've been great. Adam Murphy, you're a great guest. Mr. Ptah Amen, you were a great guest. I definitely appreciate you guys for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
What I want to say is this to the viewers, is that racism does nothing but hurt, kill, and destroy. And I would say, if skin color could speak, it would tell us to focus more on character. If skin color could speak, it would tell us to focus more on character. Thanks for joining me today on Just a Jewel. Hopefully you'll join me again next time.
Just a Jewel with our host, Arthur Malik.